What is up, everybody, and welcome to the FPL WildCats live. We are, of course, looking back at Game Week 4 and towards Game Week 5, and as you probably already know, we do have a special clip from a special guest, but I'll let Nim do the introductions there. But before we get to Nim, of course, make sure to hit that like button on the stream, share it out so everyone knows, and of course, I'll pass this over to Nim Freer, the Master of Ceremonies. Take it away, Nim.
Hi, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. If you're new to the show and, well, if you're a regular guest, we always go through our teams about this time. So that's where we'll start off, and then we'll pass out to Jules to tell us how she's been getting on, and then we'll move on to some of your questions and your comments. But do make sure you keep those questions and comments coming on the chat, so that if anything comes up that's relevant while we're talking about our teams, we can stick it in. So, first of all, I'll pass over to Kurt. Kurt, how did you get on last game week?
For once, I've looked back at my team and I thought, good game week. It's
Ooh.
About time. And I had a good captaincy pick. I've waited so long and I managed to get a good captaincy pick out of Marcus Alonso, who picked up another assist and a clean sheet. I did think I was...
You captained Marcus Alonso?
Yeah.
Wow, you got brave pants, man.
I'd more say desperate. Now, usually I get desperate around game week 10. This is game week 4, and I got desperate after 3 blanks. But I was convincing myself it'd be a last-minute Bournemouth winner and no, attacking returns for Marcus Alonso. But he got myself 9 points. As well as that, I got a clean sheet for Azpilicueta. I got returns for Benjamin Mendy, who got another assist to match Alonso's 5. Mane and Firmino did well. Aguero was going to be my captain, so I've avoided one there with him. Maybe lost some points with Shaw on the bench. I had Bernardo Silva, who was dropped, which is a slight worry. But overall, I'm going into the international break. 61 points, my best game week so far. I've gone up in loads of rankings. I've gone up in, I think, over 1 million in my overall rank. So it's about time my team started kicking on. The Walcott injury is a bit of a worry, but all in all, I think my team is looking quite strong. I've got a decent back line. Trent AA, Azpilicueta, Mendy and Alonso. Mane in the midfield. This is quite a weak midfield, I have to admit. Bernardo Silva, who doesn't play, is going to be a worry. Sigurdsson hasn't really hit the ground running. Walcott's injured. I've got a good front two, so I need a couple of transfers. It's not looking too bleak, but 61 points, a good captaincy pick. Just relief, really, is all I'm feeling. Just relief. But finally hitting the ground running. Only 3 game weeks late, but it's about time I started doing something well.
That Alonso captaincy could have been a masterstroke as well. He could have had a hat trick on another day. The clips. Yeah. So it was a great shout, to be fair.
Okay, then Brett, would you like to fill us in on how you did?
Sure. 57 points for me this week. It's probably the 4th game week in a row where it's not spectacular, but not terrible either. It's just sort of steady and consistent, I suppose. Consistently mediocre, if you like. I decided to use the wild card this week after game week 3, which was obviously a bit earlier than I had anticipated before the season started. But my reason for wildcarding this soon was because I kind of knew if I didn't get players like Marcus Alonso and Eden Hazard in, I knew they were going to do well against Bournemouth, and then I'd be in a position where I got to get them in on the wildcard in game week 4 anyway, with a home game against Cardiff, and then their prices would have been a lot higher. So I was kind of like, I needed to get Aguero in as well. So there was a lot of reasons, and I had Richarlison and Arnautovic, who was an injury doubt at the time. So there was quite a few reasons to wildcard, and I've put together a team now which is almost identical to how it would have been this next game week anyway, barring the Walcott injury. But yeah, not a bad week. I took out Edison on the wild card in the end, very last minute, and I went for Laporte instead. Mainly as a short-term option for their, undeniable good fixtures for Man City. And I've left enough in the bank now to get potentially Robertson for Laporte, maybe when Liverpool play Southampton. And I actually got quite fortunate with dropping Edison because I brought in Hennessy and he saved a penalty. So that was quite lucky. Hazard and Alonso both delivered, brought them in on the wild card. So yeah, and I've had Mitrovic from the start as well. He's been ticking over and doing me a job. Obviously Zaha was the big disappointment because I thought Zaha this week at home against Southampton, I really fancied him to go big. I did. So a bit of a shame with his injury, but hopeful that he'll return in time. But yeah, that's my team, 57, and pretty happy with how my team is now for the next game week. Just got to wait on Walcott and Zaha now.
Yeah, well, I had an absolutely shocking week. So many red arrows. It's not even funny. So Kurt passed that on to me, I think. Just 42 points, to less than the average. I'm somewhere past the 1 million mark, and I'm on a wild card. I'm active, people.
Nice.
You can see on the screen why I'm on a wild card, but both my Palace defence let me down. It was a bit of a risk having 2 Palace defenders, but it didn't work out. My Richarlison replacement of Walcott, I'm not the only one, I'm sure, but he got injured. As you said, Zaha was injured, or is he? None of us can work it out with his tweets. We're like, we don't understand. Are you there? Are you not there? What's happening? I took a -8 for Pereira and Alonso. Pereira got me 1 more point than Bilva did. But at least Alonso delivered, as you said, with his clean sheet, his assist and bonus points. Feels far too early to wildcard, if I'm honest. I know I've said this to you guys during the week, but I'm also feeling quite annoyed with myself that I've only just taken a -8 and now I'm wildcarding. But I just didn't have any backup on my bench, and that's the bit that's worrying me, is that if these people remain injured or any more injuries happen, I just don't have anything to back up the rest of my team, and so that's why I've wildcarded. Well, that, and because I just couldn't not have Mendy in my team any longer. So, Jay, what would you like to tell us how you got on?
Okay, so I got 48 points. Not amazing, but it was just above the average, and generally my rank stayed under 300k, so I'm happy with that my rank wasn't too badly affected by average game week. The defence is where I keep getting my points. Shaw, Robertson and Mendy all getting 5 points each. That seems to be the most reliable part of my season so far, was my pick of defenders. Unfortunately, I did go for Fabianski over Patricio, and it was very close to Fabianski getting a clean sheet, but it didn't quite come through, which is fantastic. And I think I'm just giving up on the West Ham side, to be fair. So I have activated my wild card to try and... I think I wasn't in too bad a situation with my midfield and attack, but I just felt it could be better. And I wanted to make sure I got a certain few players in my side before they went too high in price. The main one being Marcus Alonso. Yeah. I just thought he's going to keep rising in price, and if I wait to play the wild card later, I might not be able to get him in. I've not taken any minuses so far this season, so I thought I don't particularly want to take any now. With my rank not as high as I'd have hoped it would have been, so I thought play the wild card now, get the players in that I really want, and try and make the most of the 2 weeks where players can rise in value, and try and see if I can add like 0.3 million to my team value in total, and then pick my team just before the game week starts. I did captain Aguero over Salah, which at least so far I've managed to pick the right one of those two to captain, but Aguero wasn't exactly the biggest score I was hoping for against Newcastle. Was close to triple captaining, but I'm glad I didn't. Mane, of course, has done well for me this game week, though. 10 points. Would have been nice if I'd captained him instead. Other than that, though, Walcott injury has affected me. Bernardo Silva not looking as promising as he originally had. And then King and Tucson not being the ideal budget strikers to have in the side alongside Aguero. I thought it was time to play the wild card. And I always plan to try and use it in an international break, just so I've got more time to, one, make the best of team value, and 2, I've got time to think about things, look over the stats. But I was hoping to play it later, but I'm okay with playing it game week 4, and I'm happy at least still being in the top 300k, so not looking too bad.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant you've managed to keep that rank. I think part of my the reason mine went down was because I took the -8, really. Anyway, thanks for that. It's at this stage we will hand you out to Jules and our pre-recorded clip. She has very kindly done for us, and she'll tell us how she has got on so far this season in the official Fantasy Premier League, and she might even be considering moving over to the Kurt side with a bit of Salahless action. So enjoy the video. We'll see you in a few minutes' time.
Hey guys, so the FPL WildCats have asked me to do a video about my FPL team. We're 4 game weeks in, the international break approaching. We finally get to have a bit of a breather this weekend and not have to worry too much about our teams. But I know what we're all like. We're going to be keeping a close eye on all the players as they play for their countries to see if anyone picks up any injuries, which hopefully they don't. But so far, the season has kind of been okay. I've got 238 points overall and I'm sitting 708,000th in the world. It's been okay. It's been steady. I've not had any game week where I've gone, yes, that was amazing. But I've equally not really had a game week where I've thought, oh, that was awful. So it's kind of just been trickling in slowly with the points. The one thing that I'm quite pleased about that I did is that you all know how much I'm obsessed with Eden Hazard. Yeah, got him in from the start, and I think that's definitely stood me in good stead because I think a lot of people are kind of now getting ready to jump on Hazard, and I've already got him, so I'm quite happy about that. In terms of the rest of my team, so I'm one of the people that does have Salah, but I'm not going to lie, I am thinking about potentially downgrading him to Mane. It seems that Mane's the one that's been bigger in the points than Salah so far this season. And with Salah's price tag being so high, I'm just not quite sure how much longer I can kind of cope without Mane in my team. So that's my biggest dilemma at the moment. The other dilemma is whether or not to get Kane in. In terms of my team itself, Aguero up front, I'm definitely keeping him there. But as soon as the Champions League starts, is he going to get rotated? That's definitely something that I'm thinking about. But something I'm pleased about is that coming into game week 4, I decided to bank one of my transfers because I do not want to wildcard yet. And I know a lot of people have already hit the wildcard button, but there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that my game plan is to kind of keep hold of my wildcard a little bit longer so that I can use it a bit closer into the Champions League fixtures once we get a better idea of kind of who's being rotated for those Champions League games, who's playing in the league games. I think that's going to be quite a big one when it comes to the City team and to Liverpool as well, in terms of the players that I've got in my team. So that's my reasoning for not wanting to hit the wild card just yet. So I banked one of my transfers, which means I now have 2 on the other side of this international break to use for game week 5, which I'm hoping I won't need a 4-point hit on top of that. But if Kane is in good form in this international break, then I think that will probably be the transfer I make. Thinking of getting Kane in, but I don't think I can do it without taking Salah out. So it could be some kind of Salah out, Kane, Mane in. I'm not really sure, if I'm honest. Haven't really looked at the prices and seen what exactly I can afford yet. But the plan is, and the plan was and has gone to plan so far, is that I've kept those 2 transfers for the international break to come into game week 5 in the hope that at best I won't need a 4-point hit, but at worst it will just be 4 points rather than 8. So the plan is to wildcard a little bit closer into the Champions League fixtures, maybe even closer to Christmas, which means I can then bank my second wildcard for the new year a little bit closer to those double game weeks. So that is my plan. But anyway, as always with FPL, things go completely out the window as soon as you make a plan. So who knows what will happen by the time game week 5 comes around. I think my gem so far this season has been having Callum Wilson in from the start. He's been that player for me that's pretty much delivered on the occasions where a lot of other people in my mini leagues haven't had him. A lot of other people in my mini leagues have had Josh King. I am missing a little bit of the Mitrovic action though, because in terms of the budget forwards or the more affordable forwards, he's the one that I am thinking of getting in. Most of you know I'm a Brighton fan as well, and this year I haven't gone with Pascal Gross, and last year he was my little gem. So it does feel weird not having any outfield players from the Brighton team in my squad, but so far I've not really seen anyone other than Glenn Murray that's kind of been anywhere near as consistent enough to kind of get them in my team. I do have Matt Ryan in goal. I've got 2 very affordable goalkeepers that haven't really been doing a great deal for me points wise, but I'm fine with that for now. I think that the goalkeeper thing can wait until I do wildcard. But yeah, so anyways, that's my team. That's where I'm at so far. I look forward to hearing the Wildcats tips and more of your tips. And of course, I'll be back with the FPL show the week after next. We do have a show this week, but I'm actually on holiday. So Kelly Summers will be stepping in for me. And then I'll be back the following week, heading into game week 5 for all the tips for that one. So hope to catch you all then. Good luck.
Okay, so welcome back to us 4. Hopefully you want to see us 4 after seeing Jules. So thank you so much to Jules for doing that video for us. You can go thank her on Twitter. Her Twitter is in the link in the description, as well as her Instagram. Make sure to go and follow those. And I'll pass over back to Nymphria.
Yeah, that was so lovely of Jules. So thanks again. And as she touched upon considering going Salahless, I think that's probably something we should have a little chat about, considering there is somebody here who has been advocating the Salahless
Oh, here we go.
since the beginning of the season. And
Who's that?
I have no idea who that could be. But actually it ties quite nicely into our first question of the evening from @LonesomePundit. It says, Liverpool defence worth keeping for the next 4. Can see arguments for Salah/Mane, but 3 very tricky fixtures for the defence and possible rotation for Southampton. So I know there's 2 lots of question there, but just so you don't get completely hung up on the whole Salahless, Kurt, I'll throw it over to you first.
I'll just talk about defenders then. I've been
you
limited.
can brag
you know what
a little
like.
bit if you want to. You know, it's all good.
Oh well, obviously this is the first non-clean sheet, or first sort of blank, I suppose. They didn't get any attacking returns. Sorry, in the Leicester game. So had 3 clean sheets. You know, so people like Trent AA, constant foray of points, and then also all of a sudden it drops to 2 points for him this week. So it's an interesting one because he is. There are some. You know, I'd say the central defenders. If you've got people like Van Dijk, or you've got Joe Gomez in, I don't see them getting much. You know, the only time they'll be getting attacking returns is from corners. But for Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson, Andrew, something Robertson, I never remember his first name, they're always going forwards. And you've seen it, you know, I think a few times last season with Robertson, he charges forward and quite often he will join Salah, Firmino, Mane going forward as that third attacker. So they're not too much of a worry. And I look at the games, there are some terrible games, but Southampton, they should be getting some returns in that. It's the B side. Spurs have struggled and they're playing at Wembley, and you see that they've played poor, you know, against Watford and they've got beat. They don't play poor and win. I think Liverpool didn't have the best of games against Leicester, but they won. So I put them up against that. Man City is no point looking at that and thinking they could get attacking returns. It's worth looking at those games, calling them a write-off, but you've also got the thing of you shouldn't be you doubled up on your Liverpool defenders. So I've just got Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'm looking at my defence. I could play a 3-man defence of Mendy, Azpilicueta and Alonso. Mm-hmm. So if you don't need to get rid of him, if you look at your defence and you've got, you know, let's say 2 4.5s, a 4.0 there, you're thinking, I'm in a bit of trouble here. Maybe then, because you could get some attacking returns elsewhere, if you've got players to replace them, it might be worth just benching them. Because even then, if they score points, they're still going to rise up in price. So, and apart from that, it's a good job that some people are finally listening to the FPL Oracle and not going with Salah anymore. So it's about time is all I'm going to say. But I won't get hung up on it.
Yeah, yeah. Do not get your head too big.
It's big enough as it is.
It's so difficult, isn't it? I'm actually considering going Salah-less on a wild card at the moment. The cash but the cash it frees up is just ridiculous. I'm in the same boat with Aubameyang as well, selling him and whether to keep him or not because of the cash it frees up. But Mane and Salah are so close in the stats right now. Salah has 2 goals and 1 assist to Mane's 4 goals. I'm tempted to own both, if I'm honest. So actually, I've gone from thinking early on in the week that I'll go Salah-less to now thinking I might go for both. I know their run of fixtures is difficult, but I'm trying not to get a bit dragged into the fixtures this season because already we've seen a lot of surprises where we didn't think we would see them, if you see what I mean. So I'm trying not to get too bogged down by that, and then get a little bit more of a look at Mo in the next few weeks if I keep hold of him, because then it'll be quite easy to move him to Hazard, who's doing quite well at the moment with his 2 goals and 2 assists. And but Hazard always trolls me, so I'm a little bit worried on that one. I don't have quite as much as Jules has, quite as much luck as Jules has with Hazard, I'm afraid. So, Jay, what do you think? Salah-less?
Okay, I'm not going to sit here and say there hasn't been a little bit of doubt in my mind with the fact that Mane...
That hurt you to say that,
yes,
didn't
it? The fact that Mane has been very close to equaling all the underlying stats, and the fact that he has scored more points is very worrying because he comes in, even with his price rises, he comes in as cheaper. And I will accept anyone's argument of going to Hazard for the next 4 fixtures just because of Hazard's performances and the fixtures. But what I will not accept is that Salah isn't an option for this FPL season with the underlying stats he's got. 19 attempts on goal for a midfielder. If we compare him to Mane, that's 10 for Mane. However, goal threat from inside the box is similar, 12 to 10 in Salah's favour, and shots on target is 7 to 6 in Salah's favour as well. Now, all we need is Salah to start scoring those goals from outside the box that we know he can score, scoring those goals that we've seen him score against big sides as well as small sides. We just have to look at them playing Man City in the Champions League last season. Salah, Mane, they all perform against the big sides as well. And I also think Liverpool's game almost suits playing bigger opponents because they press and they're more likely to succeed against a side that's trying to pass it around the back, which is what the bigger sides do. Don't get me wrong, I do not expect Liverpool to get clean sheets against the likes of Man City and Chelsea, but Robertson, Trent Alexander-Arnold can go forward and potentially get some points from assists or goals as well. So will I get Salah out? He's currently out of my wildcard team, but that's just because I'm worried he might drop in price. He'll probably come back in because I'm hoping so many people drop him, his price drops and I can get him cheaper and then make some profit that way. But I think a lot is being made of one blank because Salah still has been returning points. The only worry is Mane's. Mane is still getting points at a better rate than Salah, at least for the first 4 game weeks. So I'm not giving up my faith, but then I'm the same guy that didn't give up faith on Harry Kane for the beginning of last season, and that didn't exactly work out for me. So maybe I'm just too loyal to players once I think they're a real option in the game.
Brett?
Yeah, it's funny because I knew last week that if Salah did blank the game week before the international break, that all these wildcard teams are going to come out without Salah. I knew this would kind of happen.
You could see Kurt sat there like he is now, feeling all radius.
As we spoke about last time, like I can get why people want to build a team without him because of the team that you can build without Salah. There's no doubt that extra 13 million can go a long way. I've obviously used my wild card and I've kept Salah. I'm not at the stage where I'm going to risk dropping him just yet. When people talk about the fixtures, it's not so much the Premier League fixtures that worry me. It's because they've got Tottenham away next. Salah scored there last year. Liverpool might not win there, but Salah can score in any game. Last year he scored against Chelsea, Spurs. We scored against a lot of big sides. But it's the Champions League fixtures that do concern me a little bit because of the the difficult group that Liverpool got as well. You know, it's not like they didn't get a good luck of the draw with the Champions League group, whereas Man City did. And I think I can't quote Man City's group right this second, but they had a much more favourable group. And therefore, I think, well, maybe Guardiola can play a slightly weakened. I know they're going to focus on the Champions League, but I think some of the games there are quite favourable. But with Liverpool playing PSG and Napoli in the first 2 Champions League games, like, they're really big, tough games. And when I look then at Southampton, which for me is like, wow, I've got to captain Salah for this game. That's in between. That's after PSG and before Chelsea. So that's where it does get a bit worrying. I'm not, like I said, I'm not at a stage where I'm going to drop Salah just yet. All the stats are there. We saw the season he had last year. And, you know, like I said, all the touches in the penalty area, the shots, he's like almost top of everything still. So the performances are still there. And because of his high ownership, you know, it is a big gamble not to own him. And what I've been thinking is that anyone who's wildcarding now, this is what I want to, I was going to put a tweet out about this just so everyone can understand.
Pearl of wisdom. I'm a wildcard. Tell me.
This might sound like the most obvious thing ever, right? But just put yourself, you're an FPL manager, put yourself in this scenario. Okay, so you're on the wildcard. You decide, you get the genius idea that you can go without Salah, right? The deadline for game week 5 comes. Okay, you haven't got Salah. 30 minutes later, once the game updates, you can click my team and start planning for game week 6. And if you don't own Salah, you're not going to have him with Southampton at home next to him in your team. And I think to not have Salah with Southampton at home underneath him would be a big concern for me personally. So I know that sounds like the most obvious thing, but just put yourself in that situation where everyone's people are screenshotting Salah with Southampton at home, and you haven't got him. You know, that for me would be a bit too much of a worry. So I'm going to give it a few more weeks before dropping him completely.
And then the team sheet comes up and there's no Salah, and everyone who's done that is like,
probably my luck, yeah. But
I think there's an argument to say though that Salah's the easiest player to transfer out of your side, so it doesn't have to be done on a wild card. You can change Salah to absolutely anyone at any point in the game. So if you think the Southampton fixtures one to keep him for, maybe keep him for the Spurs one as well. And it's not going to be difficult to then get rid of him for the fixtures after Southampton.
This is really why I didn't want to be wildcarding this early, because people was like, we've got all of the information. Well, to me, we haven't, because we haven't quite settled in exactly yet to who's getting rotated when for Champions League, and we're still not entirely sure which players are going to hit form this season. So that's why I prefer to use mine much later on down the line, but I kind of got forced into that a little bit this season. But just to touch on the defenders point, my end, I'm not considering dropping Robertson yet, if I'm honest. He's second behind Mo for passes that led to a shot per 90 minutes. And as you all said, he's got attacking threat. And this season, you know what, the defenders are just killing it when it comes to attacking threat. So I can see Kurt's side of things with having, is it Trent, Kurt, you said you've got? Yeah, to have that cover. But at the moment, for me, it's like keep Robson for his attacking threat, see how he gets on in some of the tougher fixtures. But again, he's a bit like Salah, as are all of those defenders. They're always going to be very easy to trade down for somebody a lot cheaper, and then, you know, find an alternative that's cheaper and spend the money elsewhere. Happy days.
Yeah, I think, you know, sometimes those decisions can pay off, but it's like to get rid of Robertson now in the form that he's in, for example, it could be a genius move if he blanks in the next 2 or 3 game weeks, but you're almost trying to predict. And like maybe it's worth just waiting a game week or 2. Like him blanking in 1 or 2 game weeks more isn't going to kill your team or kill your rank. So I think if you own Robertson in the form that he's been in, it would be a bit criminal not to go without him. I can see why people wouldn't because of the fixtures, but because he's so heavily owned and he's doing so well, it's being a bit, maybe trying to be too clever, and it could cost you, you know.
Cool. Shall we throw it out to some questions?
Yep. Kurt, have you got any questions there?
I'm about to sneeze, so if I mute my mic. can feel it coming. I'm going to try and find one quickly.
Usually, if I say it beforehand, it stops people.
One thing that I've seen Midge Tavius say, which from Brian Yule, I should say, which it's an interesting question of sort of between a rock and a hard place. Is Rondon better than Deeney? Because a lot of good sort of something that Andy, I think on Twitter, spoke about. There's a lot of at the start of the season you couldn't pick one good player. A lot of people were saying there's not one good third striker. 6.5 or below, 7 million or below. Now there's too many, but those two probably the least appetising. But which out of the two? My sneeze is gone now as well, so I'm fine.
See, it was the bless you every time it worked. Mitrovic.
That wasn't an option.
Do we know that Rondon is going to play 90 minutes of every match? Did he play 90 minutes last time?
He's only started 2 out of 4.
Right.
If I actually have a look, did he play 90 minutes last game week? No, 73 minutes. So he did start, but he didn't play the whole game week, the whole 90 minutes. I would go Deeney because Watford look good and Newcastle don't, pretty much. And I mean, to be honest, I probably wouldn't go either myself because it's been brought to my attention quite often that Watford do start off quite well and then usually kind of slow down a bit. Of course, it's a different manager, so the form could continue. But for me, I just think there's better options with better fixtures. Callum Wilson has really good fixtures. Zaha is a bit more expensive, but his fixtures are really good as well. And then you do have the likes of Mitrovic, who, as far as underlying stats go for a striker, is just really performing well. So I'm not really looking at either. Watford with Man United and Arsenal in the next 3. Of course, they did go and beat Tottenham, so if they continue that form, it's definitely possible Deeney continues to score. But I think I need a bit more from Watford before I would go for Deeney. And Rondon really isn't on my radar yet because nothing he's really shown me in the time he has played makes me think he's going to do anything amazing. And he is playing for Newcastle, who haven't looked amazing either.
Yeah. What about you, Brett? Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. For me, it's Deeney, no question. Between Deeney and Rondon, as we've stated, Rondon hasn't quite nailed his starting spot yet. I believe, because he's been given the number 9 shirt, there's no doubt that Rondon will be the main man in a couple of game weeks' time. But Newcastle, they haven't looked. Their form has been pretty poor so far. They've still got some difficult fixtures. Watford, on the other hand, have been awesome. 4 games, 4 wins. Deeney's on penalties, a big confidence player now. Watford's fixtures do take a turn for the worse now, but they're in massive confidence. So for me, it would be Deeney over Rondon at the moment, or every day of the week.
Cool. Well, we have a question here which is quite open. But FPL Blonde asked how would we cover the Champions League rotation, especially in terms of Liverpool? So I guess it's kind of going back to the last question, but it's a big question and a lot of people are asking about it. I'm not sure there is an answer, but I will pass it out and see what the guys have to say. So Jay, Champions League rotation, any thoughts?
I personally think people worry a little bit too much about it, especially early parts of the season. There is going to be times when players are rotated, but you can get that when the Champions League isn't even on. We've seen with Man City, Pep will rotate no matter what, pretty much. So there's nothing I can do about the Champions League fixtures and rotation until I start to see a pattern. So I can sit here and stress out and think maybe I can figure it out and then be completely wrong. Or I can play the game for the game weeks I see ahead, and then when something happens, I can react to it. Because I could drop someone like Salah, thinking our rotation. They brought in Shaqiri, Sturridge is back. They have options to play instead. But with Liverpool's start, if they continue, could potentially win the league. And to beat a side like City after the run they had last season, dropping points anywhere could cost you the title. And so I get that the Champions League is just as big a thing to win, potentially even bigger with monetary value and so on. But both sides are going to want to win both competitions. So until I see a pattern, if there's a clear pattern and it's like, okay, Salah gets dropped 1 week between Champions League fixtures and then Shaqiri comes in for Mane the week after, then maybe I can do something with that. But until I see some actual information, I'm just going to worry myself about something I can't control.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Like, that's what I was trying to say earlier, really. It's almost trying to be a little bit too clever. And, you know, if you take out Salah or Mane thinking, oh, they're going to get rotated, or even Robertson, and then the team sheet comes out and they haven't, it's almost like, oh no, I've tried to be a bit too clever here, and it could sting me. I think it's better to get stung in the other way and own them and have them get rotated. They could still come off the bench anyway, and at least then after that time you've been stung, you can think, right, I'm sensing a pattern here, they're going to probably be rested in this game. You can work from there. So I think we need to wait until, you know, we see how the rotation works for these teams. But I will just quickly point out, though, with Liverpool's game against Southampton on the 22nd, the game against Chelsea on the 25th is the League Cup. So that'll surely be the two B teams against each other. So that gives us a bit more incentive there for, you know, Liverpool to play a strong side against Southampton, perhaps.
Good point. Good point. Kurt, any more questions?
Going back to that point quickly, I'd say one way to sort of cover yourself with rotation is to ensure you've got a full squad. And this is where I sort of one of the things I make sure I have at the start of the season. It's not too bad, but make sure you've got 15 players out of your 15 that are gonna were playing beforehand. Because if there's some rotation, you've got some off the bench to come. And if it's 2 points, it's 2 points more than you did have. So that's one thing to definitely go for. In terms of questions, I did see an interesting one, which I think I'd reset my chat, so it's now gone. Oh dear, that's a bad name for me to try and pronounce. I'm going to say PB. Do apologise, but I'll probably insult people more by saying the name. I'm thinking of captaining Alonso over Salah. Am I crazy? I don't own Hazard or Aguero. There's one of three to consider.
I wouldn't say he's crazy. I wouldn't. No. It's definitely not crazy because Alonso has returned. You know, he's 1 point away from delivering double digits every single game week so far. It's only the 9 that he got last time. So it's definitely not crazy, especially with Cardiff at home next, you know, which despite Cardiff's excellent performance against Arsenal, that was at their ground, and away from home, I'm finding it hard to think that Cardiff can score there. You know, a clean sheet has got to be likely, at least, you know, very likely, you would think. So I don't think you're crazy for captaining Alonso, and his ownership is very high now, you know. But as is Salah's, you know, and Salah did score at Wembley last year. So Salah could score there too, you know. I wouldn't say you're crazy, but I'd still consider it a bit of a gamble.
Well, Kurt, you captained Alonso last week, so
it's sort of 70% thinking he's got returns every week, and 30% I haven't got a captaincy pick right. I'm just gonna go for broke and go for something really stupid. So it's sort of it was a mixture of the two. It's, you know, without having Hazard or Aguero, it isn't good. Aguero will obviously be the first person that people point out as being a potential sort of rotation threat. But Alonso's got, like I say, Brett said, Alonso's got the figures to back it up. And you look at his next game, Cardiff at home, then West Ham away. You're thinking that's another 2 wins. The way Chelsea have been playing, that's another 2 clean sheets. And then you've got to look at potential attacking returns if it's by a couple of goals, because he's in the box more than Morata or Giroud are. I'm sure there might be a stat that I'm sure that's not true, but I don't think it'd be far off. The bloke never seems to be in left back.
Yeah, someone just said in the chat as well, how can you call yourself crazy for captaining the highest point scorer of the season so far? Like, we forget Alonso is the highest scoring player so far. And I like touch upon it again, like we did earlier. It was his performance in the last game week against Bournemouth. Like, on Match of the Day, Alonso could have had like 2 assists, 2 goals, or a hat trick, or him and Hazard combined so well in that game. And there's an interesting tweet from a Chelsea supporter on Twitter that I read just before this stream. And it's a quote from Alonso. And he says, "All my life, I had played in a back four at Real Madrid and at Bolton. This is me going back to my natural position. I'm very happy with Sarri's new system. He's even happier now than he was in the 3-5-2. And that's from Alonso himself. So clearly he's enjoying the position he's in. He's in incredible form. If ever there was a time to captain a defender, it would be against Cardiff at home for Alonso. There's no doubt about that. So definitely not crazy for thinking about it, and it could massively pay off."
Yeah. Jay, any more you'd like to add to that?
Well, look, I've been looking at Alonso without owning him and watched him score points, get assists, get as many penalty area touches in a game as a lot of the strikers that game week. And while there have been a few stats where there are defenders with better underlying stats, the fact is Alonso's converting more. He's got more attempts in total. And if Chelsea are going to have a game where you think it's very likely I'll get a clean sheet, it is against Cardiff. So it's not crazy at all, because you will every now and again get a player that, even if their underlying stats aren't the best across the board, they are just converting chances. You've had players like Ramsey had a season where people didn't bring him in straight away because his underlying stats weren't great, and it was just like, he can't keep up this goal conversion rate, and he did. Yaya Toure was another one. He had a season where he was scoring screamers over and over again, and people were like, oh, all his shots are coming from outside the box. It will stop, the goals will stop, and the goals just never stopped. So if he is converting and getting points, and he has done for the last 4 game weeks, it's not crazy to captain him at all.
Indeed. Yep. Definitely.
I still won't captain him, though.
Yeah.
And yet you have Salah.
Oh, I'm probably captaining Aguero next game week, I imagine.
Brett, do you have any more questions?
Yes, there's a question from Evan. And he wants to know our thoughts on Lucas Moura now that Son is back.
Actually, I have a similar question here from Twitter from Mo. So he was wondering what the thoughts on Son was as well. So, yep, that's a good one to cover. I think I heard Jay in one of his streams or content videos saying that you think there's a possibility that Son could be back after the international break, based on the fact that he has some time during the international break to rest.
It's just conjecture on my part, but the fact is that they've just played the Asian Cup or Asian Games final. There seems to be no logical reason, and I've not looked it up, so they could have a game this weekend coming up, but I don't see why they would have a game the weekend after they've won the Asian Cup. It makes no sense. Good point. So he's going to come back, I'm presuming. Now doesn't have to worry about military service, which I don't know for definite, but I'm imagining he's happy about. And so,
well, based on some of the videos of him celebrating, I would think so.
Yeah, I haven't actually seen any of those videos, but yeah, like, he's a footballer. He wants to carry on playing football. The last thing he really wanted to do was do military service. So I think he will have almost 2 weeks off before the next game. He did play the first game of the Premier League season. He has still got the game time, match fitness, all that, because he has been playing. They might give him the next game week off, it's possible. But I think he will be back pretty soon as far as an option for Pochettino to pick. So the reason I worry about Moura is that Son issue. Do they play a formation where they could play both of those players? I don't think the 3-5-2 they've been playing really has a position for both Son and Moura, and the 4-2-3-1 they sometimes play, I'm not sure you're really going to have Eriksen and or Ali not playing in that side either. So I just don't know where both of them fit into the same system, which means only one of them is going to fit into the system. And yes, Lucas Moura's had a great start, but Son has had good season last year for Spurs. So I suppose it's all on the manager's choice of who he actually prefers. So that is why I'm in an R about Moura. And one of the reasons I made the change to Walcott straight away was because it looked like he might rise in price. I did actually fancy Moura to more likely get points, but I was just thinking long term. I wasn't planning on using my wild card. I thought Moura might not be in the Spurs starting lineup for that much longer. But shame, because I would have liked him for the last game week if I'd known I was going to play my wild card.
You would have got Moura points.
Just to quickly add to that, Jay, I just did a quick Google, and apparently South Korea do have 2 friendlies in this international break.
Well, everything I said's pointless.
No, not at all, not at all. So South Korea apparently playing Costa Rica on the 7th, and then Chile on the 11th. So whether or not, maybe they'll field weakened sides in these friendlies because they've had such, a lengthy sort of Asian Cup games and that kind of thing. For me, similar to what Jay said, it's like with Moura, I think you're safe for now. I do. I think because of his form, he'll be okay in the next game week, maybe even the game week after. But I don't like owning these players where it's always in the back of your mind that someone could come in. And that's kind of why I've been tempted to get Pedro for a few weeks, but I'm always like, well, Willian could play. So it's like, I don't like to bring in a player that all of a sudden you're always worrying, is he going to get swapped or not? And then, like I was saying last week, like if you own a player that plays 60 minutes and doesn't score, then they get subbed. If Pedro doesn't score after 60 minutes, Willian will come on. If Willian doesn't score after 60 minutes, Pedro will come on. And it's the same with Morata and Giroud, or, potentially Lucas Moura and Son as well. So Son is a player I would love to bring in when he gets back into the side in a few weeks, maybe at 8.3 million at the moment. But that's why I've stayed away from Lucas Moura, not because he isn't safe for the next few game weeks, but just because eventually you're going to have that little worrying thought in your mind that Son could come in for him.
The problem is there's so little stability in that price area. Like you said, everyone we're all looking at our rotation risk. And I'm on a wild card and I'm thinking, oh yes, that's person, and I put them in and then I think, oh no, but then they could get rotated with this person. I'm thinking, who do I stick in for that kind of 6-7 million spot? It's just,
I think that's why a lot of people are looking towards Maddison at Leicester, because he does offer you that guarantee of starts by the looks of things, and good fixtures too, so he's definitely one I'm considering as a Walcott replacement if Walcott isn't past fit. I would like him to be past fit at home to West Ham, obviously, but that's maybe something to think about in him. I think Maddison could be a good shout for that certainty of starts.
I think there's a little bit of me that's thinking I'll just choose somebody like Moura and then switch back to Richarlison, who will obviously be nailed, in the team as soon as he's back. So that's the other bit of me that's like considering that. And Kurt, anything else you'd like to add to that point?
Well, I suppose with that point, obviously, if you've got Lucas in the team, I think I've just out of curiosity, I looked back at Tottenham's last few games. So you look at the Watford game, 1 assist for Lucas Moura in FPL. Then you look at the Man United game, 3-0. You're looking at 2 goals for Lucas Moura. And you go the game before that, in the 3-1, Lucas Moura scored again. So he's contributing to goals. He's playing well. It's not as if he's just in there. He's got 2 assists, let's say, that were sort of mishit shots that have gone across. This is a player that's in form and playing well. Yes, he's a rotation risk, but my thoughts are he should really be given the time. Obviously, I'm not the manager. But he should be given the time because if you look at the Watford game, it wasn't the best, but he's the only one that's contributed to a goal in that game. You look at the Man United game, he was the best player on the pitch. Even Man United fans are taking pictures of him after, and that says something after your team's been beaten 3-0 at home. But it goes back to the point I made a few minutes ago, is that this time in the season, it's ideal to make sure you've got 15 players that can play, rather than going to a £4.5 million midfielder for the bench. Go up 0.5 and get someone like Jorginho or Kante or Ruben Neves. They're going to play. Go up an extra 0.5, maybe lose a couple of million on one player, but at least then if you say he does get dropped, he doesn't come on. They say they win 4-0. He doesn't need to come on. Let's make defensive subs. You've got a player that's going to come in, and Jorginho's got a chance to get points. Same with Kante, the way they go forward. Same with Ruben Neves. Just ensure that you've got those 15. You don't want him to be benched and think, oh, look at your bench and you've got 4.0 defender not playing, 4.5 midfielder and attacker not playing. That's when you start losing points. But have a backup before you've got the main plan sorted, just in case what you've got there doesn't work, in my eyes. But I'd say keep him because I don't think he deserves to be dropped just yet. It's not as if he's played poorly.
Exactly.
He's played really well.
Yeah, I think if I owned him, definitely keep him.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
because I don't,
Yeah,
maybe that's what's keeping me from buying him.
yeah, I'd say that. I'd say if you've got him, keep him. If you haven't got him, wait, because it's the best thing you can do.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm tempted. But no, I completely understand about the bench, and it's why I'm kind of wild carding, is because especially if I was to go for somebody like Lucas, I really want that somebody on the bench who's going to come in if he gets rotated. So we have a question from our moderator and my pod partner at Migtavius. He says, if anyone is on a wild card, so there's a couple of us, is there a player you desperately want to get in but are struggling to make enough room for? Jay, I think it's just us two, is it? So anyone you're struggling to squeeze into the squad so far?
I wouldn't say there's one person I'm struggling to squeeze in.
Exactly what my answer
Like,
is.
I've got choices to make, and if I have one player, it's going to be harder to bring in another player. So if I do want to keep Salah, and I want to keep Aguero, and I want Alonso, but I don't want to get rid of Mendy, then I'm limiting my budget to bring in Hazard, because Chelsea look good, and as far as attacking players, other than Alonso, even though he's a defender, he's pretty much an attacking player. Hazard is the one that looks like, now that he's got some game time, is probably going to be nailed on. Seems to be the player that's kind of running that attacking force for them, so I don't see them necessarily playing without him now that he's played some games of 90 minutes. So Hazard is the one that I don't have right now. Oh no, actually, I do have him in now, but I'm not sure I'll have him when I go into Game Week 5, because I've only brought him in because I think his price will rise. And I think Salah's price isn't going anywhere. I think Salah's going to pretty much stay at 13 because so many people are dropping him. There's a chance it goes down, and if it goes down, I've now sold him at 13, and when he goes down, I can pick him up and save some money on him. So I probably will not have Hazard, because I'm hoping Alonso will be enough cover, although I'm imagining a lot of people will have both of them. That's probably the one I won't have, but ideally I would like him as well. So I suppose if I manage to make enough profit this international transfer window, I might be able to squeeze him in, but then I'm likely to have a bench that is pretty useless. So that's kind of the downside of trying that. But yeah, Hazard would be the one that I think may not be in my side come Game Week 5, and then I might very well regret it.
Yeah, I'm saying there's so many, isn't there? It's the premium Salah, Mane, Hazard, Aguero, a second premium forward. So if we go to premiums up top, Kane or Lukaku, I mean, we maybe have to consider Lukaku after the last match, and the arm defence, as it's being called, Alonso, Robson and Mendy. So I guess it'll be one of those forwards for me that I obviously can't have Salah, Mane and Hazard, but like I said earlier, I'm considering going Salah, Mane, and then there's that swap, hopefully, if I need to Hazard. But I guess it'll probably be Kane or Lukaku, because I've already got Aguero, that will miss out. I've always really liked playing two premium forwards. I guess I could switch Albert to Lukaku, so there is that thought process, but it's difficult because I'm not going with that kind of wildcard template defense, not after spending so long to try and get it in. I'm definitely not going to drop that, so so everything else will just kind of have to fit in around those, I guess. So throw it back out to the chat then, lads.
Yeah, there's a question here that I actually wanted to ask Jay myself earlier. So I'm quite glad he asked this. It's a good one for Jay. Simon the Bomb wants to know what Tosun's stats are like, because obviously he's trying this guy's patience. And obviously Everton's fixtures are very good, and Tosun was a player I considered at the start of the season and didn't go with. And I'm quite interested to hear, are his underlying stats good for Tosun, or is there anything there?
I just love the way you said trying his patience, and all you could do is just smile and like, yep, mine too.
I mean, after pre-season, I had hope, and with all of Everton's transfers, I was worried that there might be rotation there. But why I was worried, I don't know, because Silva's managed Richarlison before, brought him in for big money. The likelihood of him not playing every single game was really, really low. And I think I just talked myself out of him and went, he's not bought any strikers, so Tosun will always be in the starting lineup. And he didn't have a bad pre-season, but as far as underlying stats, he's nowhere near like your Wilsons, your Mitrovic, your Ings.
Yeah.
Raul Jimenez is above him for underlying stats. Mooney is above him for underlying stats. So
wow.
Yeah, there's no redeeming quality in his underlying stats that makes me think, yes, bring in Tosun. And having watched one game of Everton live, and then from match of the day, just he doesn't. Sometimes you get a player that you watch and you go, he's playing well, but the underlying stats aren't there, and you like, just needs to be in the right place at the right time, which could happen next game. He is actually looking like a good player, and then they have a good game week and all the floodgates open. But even watching them play, the chances are dropping to other midfielders, and he doesn't seem quick enough to keep up with some of the pace of the attacking players Everton have. He seems to me to sometimes be just a bit too far off of the chance, whereas someone like Richarlison is getting there and getting the chance and scoring the goal. So there's nothing I can say that makes me want to suggest keeping Tosun when there are so many other options right now with good fixtures that are in form as well. And I'd even take Mitrovic that doesn't necessarily have the fixtures over him, because he's just having so many chances. He might sneak one in against some of the big teams. So yeah, don't keep Tosun. And
maybe it's a case with Tosun. Maybe it's a case that he doesn't suit Marco Silva's style. Maybe if you consider Tosun like a bit of a target man. Now I can't think off the back of my head from last year Watford season, but I mean, did Deeney score a lot of goals under Marco Silva? I don't know if he did. He certainly wasn't scoring goals like he has this season for Watford.
You're saying he's only good with midfielders and not great with strikers.
Yeah, so maybe like Deeney struggled under Marco Silva. Don't quote me on it, but I'm just trying to think back.
We've got 20 starts and 5 goals.
Yeah, 5 goals, season. 2 assists in the entirety of last season. The season before that were 10 goals, 4 assists, and 13 goals, 9 assists.
So exactly. So maybe it's a case of Tosun's like a target man, a bit like Deeney perhaps, and maybe it doesn't really quite suit Marco Silva's style. I mean, Allardyce was the one that bought Tosun, right? So, yeah. And Allardyce likes a target man. So yeah, just a bit of food for thought, I suppose.
So we to take it that you don't have Tosun in your team anymore, Jay?
No, because
you didn't keep him in your wildcard.
No, he's not going up in value. There's no reason to keep him there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. When you own a player that isn't scoring, but I know it's not all about the stats, but for example, Mitrovic in game week 1, he blanked in game week 1 against Palace, but he had like 7 shots on goal. So already you think, well, okay, he blanked, fair enough, but his stats look great here, so let's hold on to this guy, And Mitrovic has kind of proved that it's much easier to hold on to a player when they have all the big stats to back them up. So when, like Jay's just said about Tosun not having the stats, then it's hard to find a reason to keep him at that point,
Sure, definitely. Okay, we'll take one more and then we'll wrap it up.
Ibrahim would like to know Mitrovic or Wilson. Obviously, 2 budget strikers. Featuring in a lot of sides. So who wants to take that one?
I don't really have the stats to back it up, but I'm definitely leaning more on the side of Mitrovic. Now I know he doesn't have as good of fixtures as you say, but Yeah, I'm just definitely leaning more on form. Not that Wilson is out of form. They're very close, aren't they?
They are. It's a tough one. It's a very tough one.
It is a tough one. It is a little bit kind of flip a coin at the minute, I think. But just personally, from what I've seen, I think I'm leaning towards Mitrovic. But I'm happy to hear some stats if anyone wants to provide them, or other input.
Well,
just other input.
I think even their stats are close, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very, very close. When stats are that close, I kind of like to look at things like shot accuracy and goal conversion, and Mitrovic is winning as far as that's concerned. So, I mean, I'd say there's an argument for having both, considering the prices they are. If you're only playing one premium price striker, then potentially you could have them both in your side and reap the benefits from that. But it is a really close call, and if I had to only pick one, because of the value, the price range, and the fixtures, I would probably lean towards Wilson. I'm not saying Wilson will actually outperform Mitrovic, but Wilson is 0.4 million cheaper, which you might be able to use somewhere else, and looks in form as well. The game he didn't score was against Chelsea, and so, I mean, have both if you can, and you really want them both. And there's also an argument for Ings now, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the stats against them and Ings? Because that was the initial setup I had, which was Mitrovic and Ings and Aguero up front.
Ings is very close as well. So, for me, what leans it just towards Wilson over Mitrovic is the fixtures. And although Wilson's more expensive than Ings, again, the fixtures just look that little bit better for Bournemouth than they do for Southampton. And I don't trust Southampton players after the amount of times I've tried to pick them before and it's not worked out for me. So, yeah, for me, Wilson, but Mitrovic is very capable of getting points as well.
Yeah, for me, it could be a case that I do end up with both, because it depends on the injury of Zaha, because for me, the obvious choice from Zaha will probably be to go to Wilson over Ings. But at the moment, I've gone for Mitrovic, and for me, it came down to just personal experience and owning Wilson in the past. I always seem to own him at the wrong time, and he has great spells, and you'll bang in a hat-trick and a brace, and then you'll go ages without scoring. So he's had an awesome start to the season, and Bournemouth have played so well. I'm just worried that when I bring Wilson in, he won't do the business for me, and Mitrovic was just like a gut feeling for me at the start of the season. And because we haven't really seen Wilson and King share the goals, so I can't say they share the goals, but King has the ability to shine on his day. And I think Mitrovic, granted there's Schürrle as well, but Mitrovic is such a focal point for Fulham, and they just love to attack against any team. So Mitrovic just wins it for me, but it's more on personal experience, really. And they're both good options.
Kurt, do you want to just go with Wilson just so we confuse the situation even more?
They both look good. I think if you look at next game week, this is one of them's got Man City, so Mitrovic, he's going to have one touch, has to kick off in whatever half he kicks off, and that's just about it for that game. But all in all, I think the long run it's going to be interesting. Who scores the most, but you can't look past Wilson's fixtures. I had a look at them quickly. Leicester at home, Burnley away, Palace at home, Watford away, Southampton at home, Fulham away. Be an interesting game, that one. Just the fixtures are too good, whereas you compare that to Mitrovic, you look at his fixtures in the next 6, you've got away against Man City, away against Everton, a home to Arsenal in those next 6. So,
I was going to say, he'll score a lot against Arsenal.
Yeah, he'll score.
The team may not win, but he will score about 6. So, for the fixture-wise, I think it is Wilson, but Mitrovic has scored against Spurs. I think he's got a goal or assist in FPL in 5 of Fulham's 6 goals this season. You can't look past that. So you look at that. If it's to continue,
there's no doubt that the Man City fixture is, because people are on their wild card now, and I think they're seeing Man City away, and they're like, oh, I don't really fancy that one, so I'll go Wilson. And that is sound logic, but you
I
know,
fancy him to score there.
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know why. I don't
Exactly.
know why. It's just I have a feeling.
Man
Just like
City
I
have-
dreamt about Lacazette and Aubameyang scoring a goal.
Absolutely. That's what I was trying to get. That's what I was trying to get to. Like, Man City have conceded some sloppy goals this season. They've conceded against Huddersfield at home, I think it was. And who did they play in the previous game week?
Bless you.
Oh, for goodness sake! I thought I
Who
hit
they
that.
played now.
Oh,
But yeah, they've got, they have let in some shaky goals this season, and Fulham love to attack, so they're going to try and take the game to Man City for sure. And Mitrovic has every chance of scoring there. And then Everton and Arsenal, they haven't. I don't think either of them have kept a clean sheet yet. At least Arsenal haven't. So Mitrovic has a very good chance of scoring in all of those. In my
Man
opinion.
City have only managed one clean sheet.
Exactly.
Against Arsenal.
I know. I'm actually considering getting rid of Edison, to be honest, which is not something I thought I would be saying. I'm actually considering going from a premium goalkeeper, which is something I never do, but downgrading to 2 4.5s, or even just having a set and forget 4.5, which scares me so much. But I'm seeing people who are doing that,
That's
and
what I've got.
they're getting as good a points as what I am, so. Yeah, it's very tempting to free up that extra bit of cash for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, then. Well, we will wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. And again, thank you so much to Jules Breach for doing that video for us. I will pass you over to Jay now to wrap us up.
Okay, so like Nim said, thank you so much. Please check out the links in the description, which include links to Jules Breach's Twitter and Instagram, and also you can check out all the rest of our channels as well. Subscribe if you liked this live stream, hit that like button, and keep tuned to the channel for any clips from the stream that we think are worth putting up if you guys did miss any of the stream. And thank you guys so much for joining the stream, and we will catch you guys next time.